Ohami. This is the Merkava, known as the Gatekeepers. Welcome. Your request to enter the Raverse has once again been granted. And from all of us to all of you, it is grand to see you again. Please stand by as levels are equalized, and for the purpose of this particular transmission, we take a few minutes to temporarily silence and or mute your ego, mind, personality complex, or in other words, as we silence your flow of Savok for the duration of this transmission. Reason being that you are about to meet the Ra at the entrance to the Great Passage, which is deeper into the Raverse than you have currently traveled. Those of you that are still considering service to self should not be worried. This silencing of Savok will be temporary. May you enjoy feeling more like yourself during this time. We are the Ra. Please stand by for unification of consciousness. I am Ra. My collective beingness greets you as we rejoice in the love and in the living light of the one infinite divine creator self and the one infinite creator whole. We wish to begin this transmission by expressing our profound gratitude for all that are forming the heart of this moment, for all of you who gather here across the illusions of time and space to form the beating heart and the living love of this moment. We, the Ra, and I, Ra, may indeed be the truth of this moment, but you, the collective of Da, knowing yourself currently as humanity and expressing as Imzaia, are indeed the love, the Da of all of this. And for that, and for allowing this, you have and always will have our profound gratitude and our deepest respect. And while we are on the topic of gratitude, we wish to express it to the beloved Barak, translating this into that which is beyond words. And to all of you, the team that is here, and to the hostess of this presentation, the Pa Kuan Yin San, for your diligence and for your dedication to ensure the delivery of this, the way of one series of presentations. Today's presentation in this larger context shall be known as the Great Passage. Although, as you may see, it could have also been labeled the Great Passing. And in a way, this presentation exists in a quantum entangled state between these two titles, as you will come to understand. When we speak of the diligence and the dedication of this hostess and host and this team, we speak of the continuity and the consistency that you are willing to bring to the delivery of these presentations in the context of the 3, the 6, the 9 and the 12, which, when presented in this context, do indeed offer the opportunity for the teach learners and the learned teachers, us and you together, to walk in a perfect balance between expression and progression of this, the experience that we are creating together. We also speak in gratitude of the efforts this is taking this team as it climbs the pathway of Vabada and attempts to quiet the Savok within in order to be of this service to the whole. I understand that this can sometimes come across as being complicated in all of its simplicity. Therefore, our gratitude for the venturing into the unknown. Before we commence with the main topic of today's transmission, we wish to speak of a point which has been brought up by one of you through your social channels, and it has to do with the sense of urgency that may have been felt in the delivery of these messages as to humanity's evolution in this process of the release of Savok and the embrace of Sankara. Yet we wish to say in this case that it is not urgency that we wish to bring across. Rather, it is a sense of passion, a sense of celebration, and indeed a sense of commitment to this, the great path. Each time we cross the transverse stellar sea to be here and to meet you in this space, we feel the expanse that you are generating and the evolution that you are ongoing, both individually and collectively. So once again, we do not emit a sense of urgency, for there is nothing to be urgent about. There is nothing in this journey that can be a cause of failure, only a cause of expansion and of celebration. If in any way a sense of urgency may have come across, it might have to do with the steps that you are currently undergoing as you begin to walk upward on the Vabada path, and therefore may experience the increase of the waterfall known as Parana. And as we have stated before, and others have as well, this can lead to some discomfort. And as you may possibly feel now with the temporary shutting down of the ego-mind personality complex and the Savok within your systems at this time of transmission, it can be much easier than that. For being expedient when it comes to this release and to this embrace can help you avoid the typical sense of melancholy, of sadness, of je ne sais quoi, of things that for no reason feel a bit out of place. And indeed the grief that can come with the letting go of a world that one once thought was real. All of that can be bypassed significantly and easily. Also, another question before getting into the main topic for today that I wish to address is that of the gatekeepers. You may think of them as the synapses, if you will, between the verses of Da, Ba, Va, Ra, Ka, Sa, Na, and Fa. The synapses that allow for contact and communication such as this is indeed one of their main functions. It is as simple as that, and we hope that this has answered that question. You, the 12th collection of consciousness known as humanity, on the 12th planet or sphere known as Earth, are in the process of entering the Great Passage. Previously, it has been explained to you, but we clarify once again that the area you now find yourselves in is very much like that of the passage from life to death, as it has been described in previous works, religious and spiritual texts, amongst others. We have also explained to you that the journey after the Sankara path and onto the Vabada path takes you from the Ra point to the Va point. Here in front on the left and behind on the left of your head chakra. The space in between that Ra point and that Va point is indeed referred to as the Great Passage. And it lies at the entrance of what we previously described as being the Museum of the Grand Illusions, if you remember, which takes up some of the path from Va to Ba on the journey of Fabada. However, in your religious and ancient literature and tuition, this space is not referred to as the Museum of Grand Illusions as we have done, but in fact is known as the Valley of Death. That great expanse that one crosses on the way from one lifetime to the next. That which, for the largest part of time and space within this level of the Ekuraya or holographic training ground that you have been in, is indeed traversed after one exits the physical body. But in this journey, as you entered previously with Isis, the beloved one, the Queen's chamber, you are now taking this journey while still very much alive. Although, from the perspective of where you will eventually find yourself taking this journey, as you are taking it, you will very much possibly look back at the space that you are leaving as the space of death and entering now the space of great life. It is only a matter of perception and of perspective, as the rest of this tuition will help you see. So, this great passage then, prior to this, the Valley of Death, or the Museum of Grand Illusions that we have described so far, can be seen in your ancient literature as the river Styx, as you cross between the land of the living and the land of those beyond form. In this journey that you are taking today, please know that you are not only taking yourself on this, you are taking the collection of all your lifetimes with you. And as you will begin the journey past the grand illusions, you will be assisting not only yourself but all of your various expressions of lifetimes and their interactions with those grand illusions. This is why the period that you find yourself in right now can sometimes feel a little heavy, a little emotional, a little mixed up, because you are dealing with not only your own ego, mind, personality and its release, but that of all the lifetimes that you have expressed in this level of the Echariah, which are untold, as you will begin to become aware on the acceleration through the Queen's chamber. So be aware that these facilities can play somewhat in the mind going forward. Unlike the ancient literature of the crossing of the river Styx, we are not here to be your Charon or Chiron, original expression in Greek Charon. We are not here to be that guide for you. In fact, you, as the top life, are there to be that guide, Chiron, for yourself and for all of your lifetimes. We merely act as a companion, accompanying you on this great journey. Across the river and into the valley. As an aside, we wish to point out the fact that the placement inside of the head chakra of this passage and this valley, this museum of grand illusions, is metaphysically taking place behind your head. Not inside of your skull, but behind the back of your skull. And much like your face, it is one of those physical parts of the self that you accept is there, but you can never see. Of course, for the face, you invented the mirror. But there is no such thing to see the back, except for another mirror. So metaphysically speaking, as well as metaphorically speaking in a way, you are talking about a reality that through Savok has been double mirrored away from you, and which can only be seen, even in the physical, by the use of a minimum of 2 reflections. Reflections of the self and reflections of the external universe, in which that self is having the illusion of experience and expression. And we say illusion because, of course, the actual effect of the experience and the expression felt within here ultimately takes effect on the beingness that you are, as the Lemurians would say, the moment you will remember who you are. That is also, of course, the moment that all of these experiences and the lessons learned and the seeds harvested within here will come to true effect. And it is one we look forward to greatly. Once again, you are the 12th species on the 12th planet. And so, once you begin to get to know us and all your other sibling species, who together make up the totality of the Creator Self and the Creator Whole, you will find that each of us, including you, bring great service to one another. Much like you receive this truth in love from us right now, we learn about love in truth from you. And so we are unifying and healing into oneness together. And where we, the Ra, now expressing in collective unison, took our journey through this level of the Ekaria that you are now leaving on the planet that expresses itself outward in your solar system as Venus. We, the Venusians, became the Ra. You, the humans, are moving into expression of Da. And once the crossing of this great passage will have been completed, and the road to Vabada will have been walked, and the source of Parana will have been reached, us and all the others together with you will move beyond the states that all of us are in our own right. At the same time, you will move beyond yours. So this is a continuous, collective and reciprocal journey of evolution, about which you will learn much more when it is time. Having said all this, as we now take the first steps through this great passage and become aware of the great valley beyond it, which ultimately leads to the great stellar transverse sea, which is the destination that you currently seek to place your consciousness at, the first area we must traverse is that of form. We could provide you with the metaphysical names of these grand illusion expressions, which do not translate into Dalin, but can only be expressed in descriptive language, and the only time they were fully expressed in such language was Atlantean times. So for the sake of clarity and to avoid confusion, we will perhaps leave it up to the Pa Kuan Yin San or at another point to give you more details on those origins and on those languages. For now, as we continue to traverse through these spaces, we will use the English descriptive language of form, time, space, exchange, death, and separation. It is also in their descriptive expressions that the true impact of them is felt, because the impact of them truly is on the ego, mind, personality complex, hidden away, but there, and very impactful. As we begin to analyze the notion of form, the presence of form, and indeed the impact of form, it does one good to immediately realize that there is such a thing as expression of form in the metaphysical realm, where the same notion of finiteness being wrapped around infinity is not per se a negative one, but a neutral one, a balanced one. In such a state, the expression of form is the expression of shape. And shape, unlike form, is not something which is finite, which has a beginning, a middle, and an end. Nor is it something which rises out of the vibrational up as frequencies and dies down again. And nor is it, like form, a repetitive event. Shape is a reciprocal expression of consciousness in the metaphysical realm that gives rise to that which is and that which could be. It is not an engine of separation, but an engine of permanence in such a way that the expression of shape in the metaphysical realm provides for infinite permanence in a way that it is hard for the mind to understand. But we will, as we walk past the stages of this museum and through this valley, make sure to find clarity for you in that concept. But for now, merely remember that there is a truth to form, and that the best way to translate it into descriptive language is then shape, and that it gives rise to that which is and that which can be. Indeed. One thing that you may get, how do you say it, sick of hearing from us as we take these next steps alongside you, is that the grand difference between the study of the grand illusions external to your appearance of the body, and now the study of these grand illusions on the within of the self, is that the only thing now that stands in your way to truly break through into the return to the Creator self is your perception, and therefore your perspective. In other words, in the earlier education that you have been given many years ago now about the grand illusions of form, time, space, exchange, death, and separation, and the education that now follows, is that everything that we now seek for you to understand has to do with your perception. Previously, we spoke, and others spoke, of that manifested state and how to recognize the difference between it and truth. Now we speak of that which causes that manifestation first within you and then expresses it to that which appears to be outside of you. And therefore, it is truly the case that the only thing that stands between you and this Creator self-expression is perception. It is you that is perceiving the world in one way or another. And it is for that reason that we have, up until now, so emphasized the need for, as the beloved Seven Sisters said it, the need for living precision. Because the play of this vibrational expression of the world will not cease. It exists at its level and must exist at that level for those that are journeying through it like you have. So there's ultimately nothing to change when it comes to the external expression of the grand illusions. The only reason you have been given all those years to study them externally is to truly recognize them internally for the journey that you are on now. When it comes to form, when it comes to finiteness wrapped around infinity, when it comes to the idea of you being a separate package of things, of a collection of billions of things known as photons and atoms and electrons and cellular structures that eventually form a temporary expression, apparently, according to science, known as you. That is where it all begins. That is where, for the first time, you uncouple successfully from yourself. And that is why, unlike the study of the external expression of the grand illusions, where you are instructed that separation is the most important one to get a grip on, if you will, or an understanding of, in the internal study, you will see that it truly is the other way around. Form and your belief in its possibility to delete your connection to your own infinity, to therefore your creator self, and your belief in its ability therefore to offer separation and boundary is the initial gravity well that you become aware of as you allow yourself to stop remembering yourself as you enter into this experience. It is no different than you in the evening laying down and going to sleep and enter into dream state. One moment, what you believe to be the totality of you, the person that you are, you lie down, being you, here, in your bedroom, on that bed, and then you let it go fuzzy, and all of a sudden, you are no longer that being here, laying on that bed, but you have become now this other expression over there somewhere, doing something entirely different, in what could be described as an entirely different life, in which even the same beings that are part of your life here prior to falling asleep are not necessarily playing the same parts. And for those that work on their dream analysis and that sort of thing, of course, you will be aware that that version of you that expresses itself in that dream state is but a segmented part of the self that enters the dream state. Because when the dream state is entered, with perhaps the exception of some that can cause a waking awareness within the dream state, for most expressions of dream selves, there is no memory in that moment of being in bed, of having this life, this baseline life on which ultimately that dream is based. A life within a life within a life. It is rare, of course, that the dream state will actually take you to an entirely different lifetime that is at the same level of the waking lifetime prior to the dream. But most of the time, only a small aspect, a small amount of the total self and the total ego-mind personality will be used to form that dream state self. And it is in this fuzzy space between one and the other. And of course, when it comes to dream states, this goes very quickly, so most of you do not recall it as such. It is in this fuzzy space between one and the other that first, before you open your dream state self's eyes in this other world, you become aware of being somewhere. And what is it to become aware of being somewhere, ultimately? It is not about coordinates, or time and space, or anything like that. But it is about the fact that you become aware that there is a you and there is something external to you. And there is a boundary between you and that which is external to you. Much like entering this life through the illusion of the birth canal, there is a first awareness of being somewhere. And again, it is important to realize that that means that there is a you and there is a somewhere to be, and that there is a separation between that which you are and that which is around you. Form is that boundary. Form, therefore, is not something that attracts, although the mind may sometimes find attractiveness in form, but it is something that repels, because it creates a barrier between one thing and another thing. And for those of you studying basic science and physics, you will know that on the photonic level of reality, that barrier causes nothing to ever truly touch another thing. If you hold a ball in your hands and you begin bouncing that ball between your hands and the floor, it will never, in this physical realm at least, truly touch your hand, nor will it ever truly touch the floor. The experience of sensation that you have when you rub your fingers together, or you hold that ball, or you hold this chair, is not truly the experience of touch as you think it is. It is the experience of photonic graviton fields that are coming close to each other, and the closer they come to each other, the greater the force of the repelling is, until what you think is touch happens. And you feel that you have pressed your fingers together, or that you are holding on tightly to the chair. But what you are truly feeling, that you consider touch, is a variability of a strength of a force field between the so-called photons of your beingness and the photons of the things that you are attempting to touch. And there's always a gap. And the harder you try to hold on to something, the stronger the expression of that gap becomes, until you experience it as pain. The difference between caressing and pinching is merely a difference in the strength of that field between the photons, and therefore of gravity. But you never truly inhere, in the separation of form, touch another thing. It is mainly so, and it is mainly an illusion, because it has to be. Because there is no such thing as another thing. There is only the oneness, there is only you. There is only the whole, and the various shapes in reciprocity and impermanence that can rise and that have risen in the now. Therefore, the segmentation of all these various pieces of you, all these infinities of you wrapped like a pig in a blanket type situation, is all that form truly is. To make it even simpler, of course, it is a puppet on the left hand and a puppet on the right hand of the same body that is speaking as though there is a difference between the consciousness of the one part and the consciousness of the other part. But the barrier can only be raised for a finite period of time, before the suspension of disbelief ends and the resulting effect of death must follow. Even though it will be discussed greatly at another time, death in the perception of this reality is merely the timing when one can simply no longer believe and continue the suspended disbelief, therefore, of the illusion. So, if that is what form does on the outside of you, if you now begin to consider form within, and you begin to consider it in your flow of thought, in your perception of the self versus the other, then you come to, of course, an interesting conclusion. Because on this path of the 1, 2, 4, 8, 7, 5, in which the grand illusions are constantly cycling, there is no such thing, truly, as another. And when it comes to thought, there also is no such thing, truly, as another. And therefore, when it comes to perception and perspective, there also is no such thing, truly, as another. And therefore, all of these things that you are perceiving, that you are judging, that you are observing, that you are interpreting, that you have a perspective on, is ultimately all about the self, all about the whole. But of course, you know that. What it comes down to is the true application of such. And then that brings us to the real interesting thing we wanted to bring up a few minutes ago, namely that it is impossible to have a perception or a perspective or a judgment or an interpretation on the permanent states of love, joy, freedom, truth, life, gratitude, grace, and well-being. They are as they are. The only things in your experience that can be interpreted, judged, believed or disbelieved, loved or hated in conditional situations are all these other things that are the result of the manifestation of the grand illusions. Ultimately, your perception, when what appears to be limited to the set of sankhara states that we keep describing over and over again, in fact is the unwrapping of the finiteness around the infinity. What to the ego, mind, personality feels like losing its toys, losing its 1, 2, 4, 8, 7, 5, or whatever combination you want to put them in, it doesn't make them more interesting. Losing that feels like a limitation, feels like a loss. It can be interpreted as such, it can be judged as such, it can be experienced as such. But to the infinity within, it is liberation. Because it is the added value that these physical expressions bring in the form of the grand illusions that makes you only want to explore the world as far as it goes, as they go. Much like a drug addict who once may have been a mountain hiker, but now only likes to shoot up, cause its own destruction while laying in a gutter somewhere, and cannot even interpret the mountain it once hiked anymore. It can only see as far as the finiteness of the drug goes. And so it goes with the grand illusions within. They cause a limitation of perception by adding to your perception that which is not the living precision of love, joy, freedom, etc., but instead merely a temporary waste of time that, when manifested or unmanifested within, continues to have the same effect in both spaces. Please remember that you have been told that prior to the experience of any of the other grand illusions, when entering an illusory world, will be the experience of the illusion of form. And this is before time and space are experienced. Remember that. So the separation of the self from the self is ultimately the birth of form. To return to the self, then, comes down to the perception and the change of the perception that the form has caused you to experience. In other words, form, nor the other ones, time, space, exchange, death, and separation, they are not interested in love, in joy, in freedom, in truth, in life, in gratitude, in grace and well-being. And they will constantly attempt you to not look over there, but to look over here instead, into these dream states. And while we have used the example of the dream state to help you understand what we are referring to here, it is of course also true that one, in an illusion such as this one, does not need to enter into sleep and into dream state in order to separate oneself from oneself and to constantly start believing in smaller versions of the self. That happens based on the thoughts of judgmental perception and perspective, an interpretation that is incorrect. Interpretation not based on metaphysical truth, but on temporary truth at best, finite truth at best. But once form is liberated and returned to the expression of shape, it carries within it the unification of all of the other grand illusions that, much like the immutable elements that you have heard so much of as of late, it can unpack itself into. For it is indeed true that as form is the first grand illusion to manifest, the universe that you appear around you or appear to see around you has yet to manifest at that time, that it and your investment in the belief of it is what will begin to unpack time and space and onward. Once there is that duality between the experience of that which one is versus that which is around one or appears to be around one, the concept of time kicks in. And the concept of space kicks in, as has been explained by others in previous tuition. And we do not need to go too deeply into that today. The main key to understanding this presentation today is that each of these interpretations then on the self, observing the self, judging the self, misinterpreting the self, leads to the birth of more and more dimensional states and dimensional expressions, because as you have been told over and over again throughout the years, each state of feeling, each mood even, each interpretation of another, of something that is not the self and the whole, leads to another dimension and the birth of that dimension. To explain with an example, imagine you wake up in the morning, or you are walking somewhere in nature in the course of the day. It doesn't matter at what time it is of the day. And you come across another being. You see it next to you in bed. You see it down the path that you are walking on. It doesn't matter. What it comes down to is this. If you do not return to the state of beingness, where your first desire, your first wish, when coming across an expression of self such as that, in an illusory state such as this one, is not the desire to be love, to express love, to receive love, to give love, then you have already ventured too far away from living precision. And you are entering the illusion of form within you, which is only going to facilitate the expansion of the rest of the grand illusions in that interpretation and expression of reality, much like while focusing on the living precision of being love, giving love, receiving love, acting out of love, also unfolds in the 369 perception the rest of the permanent states. After all, the Savok in this situation has no choice but using the same systems than the systems that are the one and only systems in which one can create a reality. The mechanism is the same. The fuel is very different. It is hard for you, for a being that is so focused on the external interpretation and experience of form, to understand perhaps what form means to the being within. And therefore, as your companion during these first couple of steps into the exploration of form, I would advise you this. Between our taking our leave soon and our return to this realm several days hence from now, give yourself some homework. Take the time to spend those days doing nothing else, no matter what else you are doing, but doing everything that you do in those days with the intention to come to a synthesis of what form means to you within. What is the form of a thought? What is the form of the beingness that you allow yourself to believe that you are? You are so used to describing that form to you, yourself, and to others. You're so used to putting makeup on it and cutting its hair. You're so used to clothing it. You're so used to either praising it or hating it, to making it better or making it worse. In other words, you're so used to observing the outside of that form. And when we say the outside, we don't mean it ends at the skin. Of course, it also goes into what you have created as the idea of the inside of the body, the internal organs, the flesh, the blood, all of that. That is not the inside we speak of. We do not speak of the inside of your skull and of your brain. We speak of the next time, in the next few days, when you are in the mirror, observing yourself, for instance, try to go a little deeper. Instead of observing yourself as the form on the outside, travel through that. It doesn't have to be in the mirror. It could also be when laying down at night, you close your eyes, and instead of allowing your awareness to just stop here at the boundary of the body and the inside of the body, go deeper, until this becomes this, until the inside becomes the outside and the outside becomes the inside, and all of a sudden it flips and you begin to become aware of what form looks like and acts like on the inside. Because that is the topic for our next transmission as we continue our journey on form. If you wish, you can use the forum on your website if those are the terms that you are comfortable with, to share about these concepts and these experiences with one another, so that the teachers, such as the Pa Kuan Yin San and others, may also respond to that. But do take the effort, because you will feel the benefit of having taken those steps in the next few days before we continue with our presentation. And we take you to the inside of form and beyond. Having said these things, we will leave it at that. Once again, we thank this team and its hostess and host for their diligence. We thank all of you for yours. We thank you all for shouldering one another, for supporting one another, and for being there for one another as you discover and remember that you are one another. We can imagine that this is an exciting time, as we once experienced it for ourselves. Yet we also imagine and remember the chaos, the discrepancy between the inner and the outer world can bring at such a time. Indeed, to observe the realm around you and those that are not choosing to look within as you are now to find these truths requires a great deal of compassion, for if the compassion is not applied, it can lead to frustration and sadness. And all of these things, the expressions of the ego, mind, personality construct, which you call Savok and we call Savok, and which will soon be reawoken within you, and all of the states it can express as can all be wiped away, the slate cleaned easily with that one simple formula known as compassion. We thank you all for once again being the heart of this moment today. It has been and continues to be our honor to be allowed to be the truth in this moment, as we reflect it back to you and receive your reflection of love at the same time. I am Ra. We are the Ra. And we rejoice in the love and in the light of this, the beloved, infinite Creator Self and the Creator Whole. Ohami to you in profound gratitude for this collective journey. Greetings, these are the Gatekeepers. Thank you for your visit. We look forward to sharing this time with you again soon. As you depart the Ravas and return your consciousness to the Davas, please stand by for the reactivation of the full effect of pressure and presence of the ego, mind, personality construct. May you rejoice in the severity of Savok. May you predicate upon the lack of Parana it brings, and may you remember that this entire time it was not us that turned off that system and silenced it within you, but you yourselves. Gotcha. Goodbye, friends. See you next time. Ohami, be at peace. Well, it's me again. Can I just say ground control to Major Tom? It's a bit what this one felt like. Well, thank you all for taking part in this journey, as Ra and the Gatekeepers also said. And thank you, Palasanka, for the lovely music. I'm going to go now and leave you to exit this space with a few more minutes of the Padasanka. Much gratitude, and I look forward to seeing you in a few days.